Tonight, I want you to imagine a secret so obvious it hides in plain sight. Not a rumor, not a leak, a pattern written across 2 centuries of public records. Every time America goes to war, the same doors open, the same contracts are signed, and the same balance sheets explode. Soldiers bleed, taxpayers pay, and a tiny circle quietly gets richer. Here's the uncomfortable question no textbook asks. If war were truly unpredictable, why do the same names keep winning? If conflict were chaos, why do profits arrive right on schedule? This isn't about ideology, it's about incentives, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. 5 families, 5 corporate bloodlines, every major American war. Same result, different decade. The story you're taught is sacrifice and security. The story buried underneath is preparation and payoff. Before the first shot is fired, the pieces are already placed. Factories stand ready. Banks extend quiet credit. Fuel reserves wait in storage. Lobbyists circulate memos. When war is announced, it looks sudden. For them, it's activation. This is where conspiracy-adjacent history gets dangerous, because it doesn't rely on whispers, it relies on receipts. Contracts approved by Congress, budgets signed by presidents, profits reported to shareholders, no secret meetings required, just a system that rewards those closest to power. Tonight, we're not chasing shadows, we're tracing a pattern. A repeatable sequence that turns national emergency into private fortune. War isn't just fought on battlefields, it's executed on spreadsheets. In this series, you'll see how explosives, oil, banking, weapons, and logistics formed a closed loop. How each conflict strengthened the same corporate pillars. How temporary measures became permanent wealth. And how families turned emergency contracts into dynasties. This isn't about blaming soldiers or denying real threats. It's about asking who benefits most when diplomacy fails. Because if profit rises with every escalation, peace becomes bad business. By the end, you'll understand why wars rarely end cleanly, why budgets always expand, and why accountability quietly disappears. And once you recognize the pattern, the next headline won't feel random at all. We start at the beginning. Before jets, before oil empires, before trillion-dollar budgets. With black powder, government contracts, and a family that learned something America still hasn't unlearned. Pay attention to how early success creates immunity later, how patriotism becomes branding, how complexity becomes camouflage. Each layer makes the system harder to challenge and easier to repeat. This is not a one-time scandal. It's a machine that improves with every war, learns from every investigation, and adopts faster than public outrage ever can, combined together. Let's begin with the family that literally invented America's military-industrial blueprint, the DuPonts. You've probably heard the name for Teflon or fancy chemicals, but their fortune built on gunpowder. Every single American war since 1802, they were there. Picture this, 1800. A French chemist named Éliothere Irénée DuPont lands in America. He's not here to make toys or textiles. He knows explosives. He knows opportunity. A young nation fresh from revolution, pushing westward, constantly needing gunpowder for clearing land, mining, and, of course, war. By 1802, the DuPont Company is born along the Brandywine River in Delaware. Strategic, close to Philadelphia and Washington. Water-powered mills, far enough from the cities that one misfire won't make headlines. This is careful preparation, positioning, the first step in a pattern we'll see repeat over 2 centuries. War of 1812 hits. DuPont already has capacity. The military needs gunpowder. Contracts are awarded, production ramps up, profits soar. War ends, but DuPont keeps the infrastructure. The stage is set for the next conflict. Fast forward to the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. DuPont supplies artillery and small arms powder, contracts worth over $1 million at the time. Inflation adjusted, around $35 million today. More importantly, they're now the government's go-to supplier. Being first matters more than ideology. Who gets the contract wins the game. Then the Civil War. 4 years of continuous, brutal warfare, hundreds of battles, millions of rounds fired. DuPont mills run 24/7. 4 million pounds of gunpowder produced. Contracts worth over $10 million then, $300 million today. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The family's politics didn't stop them from selling to the winning side. Profit didn't care about morals. Every step follows a pattern. Step 1, position. Step 2, be ready when the call comes. Step 3, leverage every contract to expand infrastructure, influence, and capacity. Step 4, repeat. And by now, the DuPont family understands a secret most governments never realize. War can be anticipated and monetized. The question is, how far can preparation and timing take you? How much wealth can accumulate before anyone notices? And what happens when the scale jumps from millions to billions? Because the story doesn't stop in the 1800s, it's about to explode with the next global conflicts, turning a family into a dynasty. And when you see the numbers, you'll understand why they never left the battlefield. World War I. The stage is global, the stakes unimaginable, and DuPont is ready. By 1914, they're already supplying explosives to Britain and France before the US even enters the war. Millions of pounds of gunpowder, TNT, and smokeless powder leave their mills, flowing into the hands of Allied forces. Every pound, every shipment, turning profits into an empire. When America joins in 1917, production skyrockets. DuPont builds new plants, hires thousands of workers, and suddenly 40% of all explosives used by the Allies are theirs. Net earnings jump from $5 million in 1914 to $82 million in 1918. That's over $1 billion in today's dollars. 4 years, 1,600% growth. And here's the key. They didn't return that money. They invested it into chemicals, plastics, synthetic materials, building a peacetime empire from wartime profit. World War II brings another surge. DuPont is supplying explosives, nylon for parachutes, even contributing to the Manhattan Project. They manage the plutonium production facility at Hanford, Washington. Contracts are cost plus. That means the government absorbs all the risk. DuPont can't lose. Every explosion, every plane, every bomb funded by the American taxpayer lines the pockets of the company. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. DuPont or its successors never left. Every conflict, they supplied the materials. Infrastructure stays. Expertise stays. And the wealth? The DuPont family trust today estimated $30 billion. 6 generations removed from Elithaire Irene DuPont, and they're still living off the war profits he started accumulating over 200 years ago. But DuPont isn't alone. Another empire is rising alongside them, the Rockefellers. Oil, the lifeblood of every modern military. John D. Rockefeller didn't just build Standard Oil, he built a monopoly. By 1880, he controlled 90% of U.S. oil refining. And when the Spanish-American War hits in 1898, the Navy shifts from coal to oil. Standard Oil is suddenly essential. World War I? Rockefeller's companies supply both the Allies and, through subsidiaries, even Germany. Legal, strategic, profitable. John D. Rockefeller becomes the world's first billionaire. And while he diversifies into banking, real estate, and philanthropy, oil remains at the backbone. Wars come, wars go. Rockefeller profits. The pattern is repeating itself, almost predictably. Here's what's happening. Families positioned themselves during peace. War arrives, they get contracts, they expand, they diversify, they profit while the world burns. And the question lingers, who really wins in war and who pays the price? This is just the beginning, because the next families, banks, aviation, logistics, they all mastered the same system. Each one follows a blueprint older than most people realize. And when you see the scale, the numbers will shock you. Now, the Morgan banking dynasty. Money fuels war, just as much as explosives or oil. And JP Morgan understood this better than anyone. Governments don't just need weapons, they need financing. And when nations are at war, they'll borrow at almost any cost. That's where Morgan steps in. The Spanish-American War, 1898, small loans, big relationships. World War I, Morgan loans to Britain and France total over $2 billion between 1914 and 1917. That's more than $50 billion today. The loans buy weapons, food, supplies, all from American companies. Profits ripple across the economy. America's neutrality? Already compromised. If the Allies lose, American banks collapse. If they win, profits soar. Morgan has essentially bet on both sides. By 1917, when the US declares war, it's not just about democracy or stopping German aggression, it's protecting American financial interests. Senator George Norris said it bluntly, "We are going into war upon the command of gold." And Morgan collects fees at every step. The Dawes Plan, the Young Plan, billions refinanced, millions in fees. Morgan profits no matter the outcome. World War II follows the same pattern. Before Pearl Harbor, Morgan banks finance British war purchases. After, U.S. government borrows heavily, war bonds, treasury securities, all underwritten by Morgan. Every issuance, every transaction, a payday for the bank. Post-war reconstruction, Morgan is there. The Marshall Plan, Morgan-connected institutions manage it, again profiting while nations rebuild. Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, the same story repeats. Here's the chilling part. The family fortune today? Around $30 billion built on lending for wars while soldiers die paying the cost. And the pattern is identical. War starts, governments need money, Morgan lends, interest accrues, banks profit. Wars are financed, and the system is self-perpetuating. But banking isn't the only way to profit. Enter military aviation, Lockheed Martin's predecessors. Aviation is young in the early 20th century, risky, experimental, but the potential is enormous. The Lock brothers start in 1912 building planes for the U.S. military. Limited use during World War I, but reconnaissance and bombing show potential. After the war, many companies collapse, but Lockheed survives, maintaining connections, waiting for the next opportunity. World War II. They strike gold. Fighters, bombers, transports. Lockheed delivers. The P-38 Lightning, over 10,000 produced. The Hudson bomber, 2,800 produced. Hundreds of millions in contracts. But here's the genius. They don't just build planes, they build political connections, factories in key congressional districts, executives from the military. They become untouchable. Cold War contracts flow continuously. U-2, SR-71, C-130 cargo planes. They dominate the sky and profits. Every decade, the same pattern. Builds capacity during peace, win contracts during war. Overrun budgets, government pays, shareholders profit, and the cycle never stops. Now, let's talk about Halliburton, the company that turned war logistics into a cash machine. While others profit from guns, oil, or planes, Halliburton profits from moving armies, building bases, and feeding soldiers. And it started quietly, almost unnoticed. Founded in 1919 by Earl Halliburton, it was originally an oil services company, but Earl saw a bigger opportunity: infrastructure in conflict zones. By World War II, Halliburton was building airfields, ports, and military bases. And here's the pattern: no-bid contracts, cost-plus pricing, guaranteed profit. The government pays all costs. Halliburton takes the profit, risk-free. Korea, billions in contracts. Vietnam, infrastructure everywhere. Roads, ports, airfields. Political connections mattered. George Brown, Halliburton's partner, was a major donor to Lyndon B. Johnson. When Johnson became president, contracts skyrocketed. Coincidence? History says no. The Gulf War in 1991 brought Halliburton back into the spotlight. Dick Cheney, then Secretary of Defense, oversees contracts awarded to Halliburton subsidiaries. After leaving government, he becomes CEO in 1995, then later vice president under George W. Bush. And guess what? When Iraq and Afghanistan came next, Halliburton's contracts exploded to over $40 billion. Food for soldiers never served, fuel never delivered, construction incomplete, chaos. But the government paid anyway. Halliburton argued war zones are messy, some waste is inevitable, and the Pentagon agreed. The revolving door of politics ensured Halliburton stayed untouchable, thriving while others paid the cost. Here's the pattern, now crystal clear across all 5 companies. Position before conflict, build capacity, monopolize supply. Win the first contract, be the proven supplier, get no bid deals. Cost-plus pricing, risk-free profit. Overrun budgets, government must pay. Hire regulators and politicians, future influence guaranteed. Lobby for more conflict, influence foreign policy and military intervention. Diversify profit, war profits feed peaceful empires. This isn't theory, this is documented history, repeated for over 150 years across 5 families and companies through every major American war. And here's the kicker, today the pattern is still alive. Defense budgets skyrocket. Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Halliburton, they split billions, employ former Pentagon officials, lobby Congress, and strategically locate facilities so no senator dares oppose them. War isn't just a tragedy, it's a business plan. But the most shocking part, the money comes from taxpayers. Every contract paid, every dollar funneled to these companies comes from American citizens. And the system ensures it keeps flowing, war after war, decade after decade. The question isn't if this will continue. History proves it will. The question is, what could have been built instead? Bridges, hospitals, schools, healthcare. The opportunity cost of war profiteering is staggering. And now it gets darker, because profiteering isn't just about making money, it's about creating conditions where wars are more likely. Lobbying, political donations, think tanks, media influence, they shape public opinion and government decisions. Wars that could have ended sooner are prolonged, unnecessary conflicts are escalated, and the cycle feeds itself. Here's where it gets truly unsettling. You see, war profiteering isn't just about making money after conflicts start, it's about influencing when, where, and why wars happen. The companies we've discussed, DuPont, Rockefeller oil dynasties, Morgan banks, Lockheed Martin, Halliburton, they don't just wait for war, they shape the environment so war becomes inevitable. Take lobbying and political influence. Every major defense contractor spends millions influencing Congress, funding campaigns, and placing former generals or government officials in key positions. These aren't random hires, they're calculated moves to ensure policy favors profit. When Iraq was debated in 2002, contractors funded think tanks that published reports claiming Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Coincidence? Not likely. The intelligence, the advocacy, the media push, it all aligned perfectly to create a war climate that benefited them financially. Now consider the revolving door. Pentagon officials retire, then land high-paying executive roles at the same companies they oversaw. Lockheed, Halliburton, Boeing, they hire the regulators themselves. These executives already have relationships in government, which guarantees that when the next war starts, contracts flow like clockwork. The system is self-perpetuating. And the cost? Billions in public funds siphoned into private hands. Soldiers fight, taxpayers pay, and yet these companies remain untouchable. Investigations? Rarely meaningful. Fines? A fraction of the profits. Jail time? Practically non-existent. History shows this pattern repeats without fail. The most striking example, the F-35 fighter jet program, originally budgeted at $233 billion, now projected to exceed $1.7 trillion, 7 times over budget. And guess who profits? Lockheed Martin and its shareholders. The Pentagon can't cancel because of jobs, congressional pressure, and national security concerns. Every overrun dollar is guaranteed profit for contractors. Even in peace, the pattern continues. DuPont diversified from explosives to chemicals and plastics. Rockefeller moved from oil into banking and real estate. Morgan banks turned wartime loans into peacetime empires. Halliburton expanded infrastructure services globally. War profits become lasting dynastic wealth, untouchable and compounding. And here's the cruel twist. The public rarely sees this. Schools teach patriotism, economics, and history as if wars are noble, necessary, and unavoidable. They don't teach how the same families extract wealth from conflict for generations, nor do they highlight the systematic design that keeps it flowing. The implications are staggering. Over $485 billion in documented contracts, over $1 trillion if we include indirect gains, stock price surges, real estate, and diversified industries. And the real cost isn't just financial, it's human, social, and moral. Wars that could have ended sooner, lives lost unnecessarily, public resources diverted from infrastructure, healthcare, and education. History isn't just repeating itself, it's being orchestrated for profit. And the pattern is predictable. Position, contract, overrun, influence, repeat. Every war, every generation. Here's the part that makes you question the system itself. By now, we've seen how profits are made, who profits, and how wars are extended. But the most chilling truth? This pattern is not only alive today, it's accelerating. In 2023, the U.S. military budget hit $816 billion. The 5 largest defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman, received over $200 billion. That's 25% of the entire defense budget going to just 5 companies. And the system works like clockwork. Former Pentagon officials become executives, factories are placed in key congressional districts, lobbying ensures political support, and cost-plus contracts guarantee profit no matter what. Look at Lockheed's F-35 again. Suppliers in 45 states, meaning 90 senators have constituents dependent on this program. Voting against it? Political suicide. So Congress keeps funding, despite the program being years behind schedule, 7 times over budget, and riddled with 800+ documented defects. And the taxpayers, they pay. Soldiers, they fight. Contractors, they profit. Then there's Halliburton. Iraq and Afghanistan brought $40+ billion in no-bid contracts, overcharges, and wastes that the government eventually accepted as inevitable. Why? Because war zones are chaotic? Maybe. But the real reason is profit insulation. Contractors know disputes are complex, approvals are slow, and oversight is limited. Perfect conditions to maximize gains while minimizing accountability. Even historically patriotic acts like World War II were profit-generating machines. DuPont supplied explosives, nylon, and plutonium facilities. Rockefeller supplied oil to both allies and, indirectly, Germany. Morgan banks financed governments. The wars didn't just happen. They created unprecedented opportunities for these families to entrench their wealth. And this isn't just theory. Public records, government contracts, and SEC filings document everything. These companies have built multi-generational dynasties, not by chance, but by exploiting a system designed to guarantee profit from conflict. Here's the kicker. The next conflict is already partially funded before it even begins. Lobbying, influence, stock positions, and existing contracts ensure that when tension escalates, they are the first in line for no-bid, cost-plus contracts. And the cycle? Predictable. Profits surge, budgets overrun, politicians retire wealthy, shareholders smile, and the public foots the bill. The question isn't, is this happening? The question is, how much longer can the public ignore it? Because the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. And the evidence from the 1800s to today proves it. So now we arrive at the most important question of all. Why doesn't this ever stop? If the evidence is public, if the contracts are documented, if the pattern is obvious, why does the machine keep running? Because war profiteering doesn't survive on secrecy alone. It survives on complexity. The system is deliberately hard to understand. Defense budgets are thousands of pages long. Contracts are buried under legal language. Oversight committees are staffed by people who once worked for or will later work for the very companies they're meant to regulate. By the time the public notices a scandal, the money is already spent, the war already fought, and the profits already locked in. And here's the final layer: fear. Fear is the most powerful accelerator of profit. Fear of enemies, fear of instability, fear of falling behind. Every time the public is told we must act now or face disaster, the checks get signed faster, oversight weakens, and resistance disappears. Fear silences questions, fear justifies urgency, and urgency is incredibly profitable. This is why wars are framed as inevitable, existential, or urgent, because once fear takes over, cost no longer matters. Lives become numbers, budgets become abstract, and profiteering hides behind patriotism. But history shows something crucial. Wars don't just reshape borders, they reshape who owns the future. The families and corporations we followed didn't just profit once, they used war profits to buy banks, media, politicians, land, and industries. They turned temporary crises into permanent power. That's the real prize of war, not victory, but control after the smoke clears. And this brings us to the final truth. War profiteering isn't an accident of capitalism. It's a feature of a system where private profit is tied to public destruction. As long as wars generate guaranteed returns, as long as politicians face no real consequences, as long as fear is easier to sell than peace, the cycle will continue. Not because people don't know, but because the system rewards those who benefit and punishes those who challenge it. The real danger isn't the next war. It's a world where war has become normal business. And once a society accepts that, the question is no longer who profits from war. It's who pays for peace.